guys, welcome back to A Bowl of Cereal.
Today we're talking about a very strange serial killer called the Giggling Granny.
So Nancy Hazel, otherwise known as Nancy Doss, was born in Blue Ridge, Alabama on November 4th, 1905. And throughout her childhood, she was severely abused by her father, and he would keep her from going out, and he stopped her from going to school after 6th grade.
While her father, Jim, was a drunk and very emotionally abusive to Nannie and her siblings, her mother, Louisa, was very calm. She was described as a lovely lady. Everyone in town liked her. So at age 7, on a train, Nannie hit her head on the... That's enough. She hit her head on the seat in front of her and sustained a severe head injury from it. After that, she had severe migraine, she had depression, she had a lot of resulting health problems from this injury. Throughout her teenage years, Nannie became obsessed with this idea of a perfect husband. She would read a lot of romance magazines, specifically the Lonely Hearts column, one magazine, which was a section of the magazine in which readers could submit letters looking for love.
So between her hitting her head at 7 years old until when she got married at 16, there wasn't really anything worth noting as of escalation or becoming the serial killer she's known as today.
Besides, of course, the unhealthy obsession that she formed for this
perfect, idyllic husband. Mm-hmm. So she also claimed during her interviews after she was convicted of murders that this was the point where she, I guess, became evil. This was the root of her problems. So she married her first husband, Charlie Braggs, at age 16, who she met at work. And during this relationship, she lived at his mother's house, and they had 4 kids. Her mother was abusive, similar to the way her father was during her childhood, and she got to a point where she just couldn't take it anymore.
Her husband offered no help with the kids, and she began drinking to cope with the stress, which led her down the road.
Led her down the road.
Okay.
Down the road, the famous one where, the one that leads to murder.
Oh.
Right.
Yeah.
So she murdered 2 out of 4 of her kids with poison, and her husband was really suspicious that it was her. At the time, it was early 1900s, so people thought it was disease, or, their last guess was that it was arsenic. So her husband kind of just disregarded this, but he took the oldest daughter and left her with their newborn.
Because Nannie committed these crimes all in the privacy of her own home, there was no evidence or any information of the crime scene, because she would obviously clean it all up, destroy the evidence before anyone could see it. So it was very difficult for them to trace this back to her, to prove that it was her.
So after that, she moved away and met her second husband, Frank Harrelson, in the Lonely Hearts section of the newspaper. And they were married for 16 years, and he was a drunk, which really brought out that childhood trauma from her father. And one night in September 1945, he was drunk and he raped her, and she decided to put rat poisoning in his moonshine, and he passed away painfully that night. Similar to when she killed her children, it kind of just ended there. She got to move on. She wasn't caught. They said that he died due to asphyxiation, and no one thought anything of it.
Afterwards, she immediately moved to a new state, so even if they did think anything of it,
she got away with it. Yeah.
So
she married Arlie Lanning, who she also met in this newspaper, and they married 2 days after meeting. Romantic.
They were married for 2 years until the Jolly Black Widow struck again. Doss killed her second husband by putting rat poisoning in his food, which was a repeated MO of hers, showing no increased escalation or increase of violence, suggesting that it was for the same reason or she had the same amount of aggression towards both victims. Doss's second husband was also a drunk as well, which shows a repeated victimology.
The doctor said that his cause of death was heavy drinking and heart failure, letting Lady Bluebeard off the hook once again. So soon after Lanning's death, Doss moved to live with her sister Debbie, who had recently been diagnosed with cancer, and she wanted to help take care of her. And around this time, Doss's mother passed away in her sleep mysteriously, which was later realized as one of Doss's doings. And so she took care of her sister for a few months, and Debbie then also was murdered by her sister with arsenic.
What was strange about this was instead of killing her husbands as she had previously, she was moving on to her mother and sister. So instead of husbands that she chose, it was her direct family. Growing desperate in her search for the perfect husband, Nannie Joss joined the Diamond Circle Club, a dating service which she found her fourth husband, Richard Morden, at. During their marriage, Morden was cheating on her through the entirety, but Doss was too preoccupied with her sister and mother to notice.
After she took care of her mother and sister, she realized that he was cheating on her, and soon he mysteriously died in his sleep once again. So after Morton's death, Lady Bluebird moved to Oklahoma.
Bluebeard.
Oh, sorry. Lady Bluebeard moved to Oklahoma and met her final victim and her fifth husband, Samuel Doss. What was interesting about this one was that he was neither a drunk or abusive. He just happened to not be #feminist and told her that she couldn't read her magazines. And we know she loved those magazines. She really did. So, that same day, she laced his prune cake with a lot of arsenic, which hospitalized him for about a month. And when he came out, she just decided to take the final blow and put an insane amount of arsenic in this cup of coffee, enough to kill 12 people.
Or a horse.
We could just pretend like it played and add it afterwards. So she didn't technically have any survivors, but we like to consider her first husband, Charlie Braggs, as her only survivor because it was her only husband she didn't murder.
Samuel's doctor was confused as to why he would die after being treated for a month and ordered an autopsy for him, which Nannie agreed to after him asking a couple times, and he found a large sum of arsenic in his body. And after that, he took that information to the police and they started an investigation. The Tulsa County Police did.
So in this investigation, they found that in her past 4 husbands, they had all had the same cause of death with the arsenic or rat poisoning, and this led her to be convicted for all 4 of them. She later confessed to murdering her mother, her sister, her mother-in-law, all 4 of her husbands, and her grandchildren.
Nannie died in 1965 after contracting leukemia.
Due to Doss's crimes, the state of Oklahoma opened up the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner to investigate suspicious crimes. So is Doss a psychopath or a sociopath?
We determined that Nannie was a sociopath due to the nurturing that led to her murders, how she was abused as a child, and also her low education level since her father would not let her go to school. And lastly, her fixation on one specific person, this person being her ideal husband that she created in her head, which isn't a real person, but it was one thing that she had in unhealthy obsession with.
All right, guys, that's a wrap on this week's video. Tune in next week for me.